Hello everybody and welcome to another New Player Guide, the series where we talk about every card in a hero's kit. We talk about the Nemesis, the obligation, and we look at an example deck to understand like, hey, you really like this character, what are the next steps? And this week we find ourselves with Kurt Wanger, aka Nightcrawler, a character who I did an unboxing for, and now we're getting around to the New Player Guide. And hopefully I'll have a little bit more of a dedicated cadence to this. It will not be, 9 months between opening the pack and doing the hero review. But we won't waste any time. Let's get into Kurt Wanger, a 3-cost alter ego with the mutant trait. Has an action of search your deck for a copy of BAMF and add it to your hand, limit once per round. Has 6 hand size and 9 hit points. The BAMFs are 3 cards in the kit that we will talk about in just a little bit because they are very important to what Kurt is trying to do. But overall, just being able to go grab that helps to get some consistency to what we're looking to do with the BAMFs. And I think if I remember correctly, the hero side really tells a much better story of what we're looking to do. So let's get into that. We are looking at Nightcrawler, a 2 thwart, 1 attack, 3 defense hero with the X-Men trait and rapid teleportation, an action of spend 1 resource of any type, return a copy of BAMF from your discard pile to your hand, limit once per phase. We will get into why, but that 3 defense on Nightcrawler is really important. I think the 2 thwart is less important, but I do think it's also telling the fact that he has 1 attack. This is a hero that, very similar to Ghost Spider, probably wants to be doing a lot of what you're going to be doing on the villain phase. You have the capacity to still make meaningful action against any kind of schemes with your 2 threat, but overall, in a multiplayer game, you might be the character who's just defending for everybody, or doing most of the defending for everybody. And like I said before, obviously the alter ego can go find you a BAMF. Was it exclusively from your deck? So the alter ego cares about the deck. Nightcrawler, the hero, cares about in your discard pile. This is one of those heroes where he does work towards what you're trying to do, but he's actually just more of like a placeholder for the beyond the hero card part of the kit. So let's get into it. We've got 3 copies of BAMF. It is a 0-cost upgrade. Attached to an enemy, max 1 per enemy. Hero interrupt. When attached enemy attacks, discard this card. Declare Nightcrawler as the defender without exhausting him. We will get into how BAMF is kind of a piece of the economy for Nightcrawler, but this is the way that, like I said, you might be using that 3 defense to just block for the entire table. You get a BAMF onto every relevant enemy that you care about. Obviously, you can't put more than 1 onto the villain, but if you happen to be in a position where you can defend for the person next to you from a villain attack, you can do that. I think the other part of the ruling that I don't always think about, because you just get so much into the cadence of I'm exhausted, I can't defend. But because BAMF allows you to defend without having to exhaust, that means that you can be exhausted and still pour it in, make the block, and be on your way. Having 3 of these in the deck or in the pack, I do wish that there was maybe a 4th. I just wish that there was that little extra amount of where I can spread these BAMFs out, but you take what you can get, and it's shocking how much you will be using the BAMFs, not only for defending, but also for other things, which also makes it so that, as we will get into, it's possible that you will be going to get the BAMF at the beginning of the turn. It's also possible that you may be going to get the BAMF after you've done other things later in the turn. So you just need to keep that in mind, that this is something that you will be able to do over the course of your entire turn. It's not always as procedural as right at the beginning, or it's not as always the last thing you do in the turn. Or basically go grab it to put it on something. But let's get into what we're doing with these BAMFs outside of just defending a lot. So we have 2 copies of Tally Ho, a 1-cost event defense superpower. After BAMF makes Nightcrawler the defender of an attack, return that copy of BAMF to your hand. Deal 3 damage to the attacking enemy. So Oh yeah, so okay, so when the BAMF you used up to have Nightcrawler go defend, it returns to your hand. I believe at that point it would be in the discard pile, but basically that BAMF makes its way back, and you get to deal 3 damage. So Nightcrawler brought up about, he was a protection deck, and he brought about the archetypes where you're doing a lot of defeating minions on the villain phase, and then benefiting from that. And in terms of protection, I do think that it brought new life to the aspect that we hadn't really seen before, but Nightcrawler is also just indicative of that. He has the ability to be doing a lot of things like this, where you're just sort of messing around on the villain phase and doing something like dealing 3 damage to a minion, and that can be really helpful because you take a minion that you don't really want to have to like make a basic attack against or use an attack event against normally, and just you take them out on the villain phase. They're not even there against certain scenarios. Like my mind is entirely on the Thunderbolts right now. I think it's an incredible scenario, but just being able to play with the timing to put 3 damage onto a minion that you'd like to be put under the Thunderbolt backup to swap them out and whatever, like that can get into some tricksy stuff where yes, you are then sacrificing like 1 hit point per player of damage to that Thunderbolt, but at the same time, if you don't want to deal with Radioactive Man anymore, you have a way to usher him out of the way. But either way, this is just a fun, tricksy card, and it's not the first thing I think of when I think of Nightcrawler, but it certainly is a card that I've gotten some fun use out of. Then we have 2 copies of Scout Ahead, a 1-cost event, Superpower Thwart. Hero action, remove 3 threat from a scheme. You may discard a copy of BAMF from your hand to remove 3 threat from another scheme. In combination with Tally Ho, I have pulled this off before, where I go to defend by discarding a BAMF, having Nightcrawler defend, then Tally Ho to deal 3 damage, and then that BAMF that went back to my hand, I then discard later on to Scout Ahead. So suddenly you remove 3 threat from 2 different schemes, and suddenly you take out a side scheme, and then you take out the main scheme or whatever. But in all that exchange, you had everything lined up perfectly. Unfortunately, this is not something that you can necessarily always depend on, because the things you're going to do during the villain phase, you are going to discover as you draw your hand between turns. But being able to just do that, being able to go like, okay, that BAMF is now back into my hand. Additionally, you can just go find a BAMF with your hero ability. Being able to just do that and get really tricksy with it and have the BAMF go from the discard pile into your hand, then to Scout Ahead and to do this and do that. It is very much like you are playing a fighting game or a speed run of a game, and you're just doing things that you didn't know were possible because the pieces hadn't lined up. And when the pieces lined up with Nightcrawler, you feel really strong. And I would say that that's something that I would recommend. If you are a player who likes to kind of like combo together stuff, Nightcrawler might be the hero for you. If you are somebody that's not good with a lot of moving pieces, you would still probably have fun with Nightcrawler, but you just might not tap into everything that kind of like just makes him sing. Then we've got Port and Punch, a favorite of mine. 2-cost event, attack superpower. Deal 3 damage to an enemy. Deal 3 damage to an enemy with a BAMF attached. Deal 3 damage to each enemy with a BAMF attached. This is the point where the 3 BAMFs in the kit, I started to hit that upper limit. For the most part, the BAMFs will be kind of like moving around an awful lot. And sometimes you let them build up just so that you can kind of pull off like multiple blocks in a turn or something. But this is one of those cards that definitely, without getting rid of the BAMFs, allows you to throw them out, deal a bunch of damage, and still have the ability to kind of like combo off later. And yeah, for the most part, this is probably going to deal 6 damage. When it deals 9 or 12, that's all the better. But I've never played this where it's just going to deal 3 damage. I suppose if you really were up against, a very ticking time bomb and you just needed to get as much damage onto a guard minion or the villain, I suppose you would. But you're playing this with the hopes that you are going to be able to deal 3 damage to an enemy, maybe deal another 3 damage to that enemy, but definitely that this is going to be a 2 for 6. Beyond that, like I said, you might be up against the wall, but I don't know that I've ever played this where I wasn't dealing at least 6 damage. Then we get into the one-ofs, and the first one being Port Away. 0 cost event, superpower. Action, discard a copy of BAMF from your hand, change forms, and ready your identity. So this is just nice. Being able to have a ready event is nice. Only having one of them is a little poor. I'll even say that like the discard a BAMF from your hand is only difficult because you have so many plans for a BAMF and you'd really love it to not be in the discard pile. Obviously, if you switch to, if you're already in hero form, you can just kind of like buy it back. If there were more of this in the deck, I think you would have more reason to play your in aspect when you change form card. In this form, it's fine. It's not anything that I necessarily put a lot of stake into, and that's mainly because it's a one-up. If there were more copies of this would be more relevant. But it's one of those like, this is nice when you can have it kind of cards. And yeah, it's just kind of meat potatoes. It's doing its job. It's being just a card in the kit. Then we've got Teleport Drop, a 2-cost event, attack superpower. Hero action, discard a copy of BAMF from an enemy, deal 8 damage to that enemy and stun it. So this is a little bit different because you have the BAMF in the place that you'd like it to be. And obviously losing the BAMF to the discard pile, yes, you can buy it back. Yes, it costs 0. In fact, the fact that the BAMF can be returned to your hand and just be a resource is also a nice option that I don't always consider. I'm always so focused on the BAMF being something that I want to have in play for a specific reason. But the nice thing about this is that you can have a BAMF on an enemy that you might want to defend against, and then you draw in a teleport drop and you go, oh, actually, I don't need to burn that BAMF. I'm going to have 8 damage right here. And so, normally that more plays into the villain than anything. But just being able to do that, having this option, like this having to be on an enemy means that it's already in a place that you want it to be. And this is just another layer. Dealing 8 damage. Like the BAMF itself, using it up, and the stun kind of mimics that. Suddenly you've blanked an attack, but now it's going to be an attack in the future. If you do this to a minion, obviously you probably defeated them, but being able to stun the villain and just get that 8 damage, kind of talking in circles at this point. This is a nice card. This is another one where I wish there was 2 of them, but it just made impact. And I think it's more strategic than it looks like on the surface. Like, I've been able to talk about it at length for the last minute and a half because there actually is strategic depth. There is strategic depth to it that just did not occur to me when I first read it. Then we've got Kurt's Chapel, a 1-cost support location. Kurt Wagner gains +1 recovery, so that brings him up to a 4 recovery, which is nice because he has 9 hit points. And an alter ego responsive, after you make a basic recovery, exhaust Kurt's Chapel and choose a player. That player draws a card. So very similar to Chimichanga Stand, or whatever it's called, Chimichanga Truck, where this really is a nice card to have in multiplayer because you can suddenly have another player draw a card. Obviously in single player, you're just going to choose yourself, but any kind of like alter ego action card that allows you to sort of contribute in multiplayer sometimes is nice. You don't have to be helping anybody else out, but this is always a nice thing to do. I think the bump up in recovery is that passive ability, I think is what I tend to get more use out of. Obviously, if this combos together, if you're getting use out of that recovery, you're also having somebody draw a card. So this is actually maybe my perfect incarnation of an alter ego card because it's not making me do something I wasn't planning on doing. It's just playing into a strategy that I already, I went to alter ego because I wanted to recover. And then this just improves that and takes that 6 hand size and could turn it into 7 cards, opening up your options for what you're going to do in a turn. Then we have Prehensile Tail, a 1-cost upgrade, superpower. You can control an additional upgrade that has the restricted keyword. So this stands in, this is your 3rd hand, this is your side holster, and resource of exhaust Prehensile Tail, generate a resource for an event. That's fine because you want to play events, and a lot of his events are pretty inexpensive. So this is either going to pay for the entire event or pay for half the event, and that is pretty fine with me. This is just nice to have as a resource generator. This is also nice just because I believe his other upgrade counts as 2 restricted cards. So this just allows you to also be able to, like, you know, have that, what's it called? The aggression weapon that, like, gives you overkill. But yeah, just overall, being able to have another restricted card in a situation where you wouldn't normally can be relevant. I mean, it's definitely relevant in Venom. It comes up all the time. But in this case, you don't have 3 weapons you'd like to have. You just have one that happens to take up 2 restricted slots, and this allows you to go beyond that. But yeah, just nice resource generator. Love it when they cost only 1. Speaking of restricted cards, we have Kurt's Cutlasses. 2 cost upgrade weapon traded counts as 2 restricted cards. So I think the only other card that fits into that is Laser Swords. But Nightcrawler gets +1 attack, +1 defense, and gains Retaliate 1. So suddenly he becomes a 2/2/4 hero. This is my favorite card in his pack just because it makes him into a beast, and it really, like, suddenly being able to defend without exhausting at 4, you're probably absorbing everything. Having Retaliate, you're definitely getting some ping damage in. Like, this counting as 2 restricted cards, it earns it because this is a good card. I love it, and it's hard to say more because it bumps up your stats and it takes you from a pretty average hero, maybe even not below average, because the average, like, stat line is like 6. He has a stat line of 6. But this just does so much more and makes him so much more impressive. Having 2 attack, I think, is also underrated. Because when you're stuck at 1, having that additional, doubling the amount of damage you can deal, is great. Like I said, having a defensive 4 is wild. And then we've got Daytripper, the last card in the kit. So she is a 2-cost ally, Daytripper, Amanda Septon, 2 thwart, 2 attack, 2 health, Mystic ally. Responsive: after Daytripper enters play, search your deck and discard pile for a copy of BAMF and attach it to an enemy. Deal 1 damage to each enemy with a copy of BAMF attached. So yeah, this is just nice. You're guaranteed to deal at least 1 damage to an enemy. If you have all 3 copies out after this and you get to just spread out 3 damage, even better. You'll break some toughs. Maybe just take out an enemy that you don't have to bother exhausting to make an attack against. Not the best card in her kit. I would probably say that it is maybe in the top 5. This can do a lot of work and it can be really, really powerful. But yeah, not much more to say. A fine enough identity-specific ally, and it definitely helps because being able to find BAMF in your deck or your discard pile is something that your hero has to do, but it needs both sides of its card to pull off, and just being able to do that with Amanda is definitely notable. But let's go talk about the example deck, and then we will get into the obligation and Nemesis pack. All right, everybody, welcome to the example deck, where we will be talking about a deck that normally I would have restricted this to the core set plus Nightcrawler and 3 to 4 other packs. We've broken that rule a little bit here, mainly because Nightcrawler I think is one of those characters that needs to grab elements from so many different places. But even though I do not speak Korean, we are looking at a deck that I believe is Guardian Nightcrawler event driven. And I'll say that this jumped out at me, one, because it doesn't actually go that much over the limit, because I think the only cards here, like, this is the only card from Spider and this is the only card from Age of Apocalypse. So if you just don't have those, you can just sub out for 2 different allies. But this was very indicative of what I would envision I would want to do with an expanded card pool Nightcrawler deck. And so let's get into it, because even without being able to read this breakdown, I kind of I vibe with what's going on here. And what I'm taking from this, I'm going to try to come up with like a thesis statement whenever I do one of these so that you understand a better idea of why I picked it. So we have cards that came with Nightcrawler, like Change of Fortune and Ripos, or Ripos, I don't remember how this is pronounced. I looked it up once, where they added to this element of we are going to do our combating on the villain phase. But I feel like there were other cards outside of that that really kind of came to prominence once this was an archetype that you could work with. And so, yeah, I think this is just a good example of that. First of all, we've got the Protection Daredevil, who is from SPDR's universe. We don't even know if this is Matt Murdock, but it is a 2-cost ally, 2 thwart, 1 attack, 3 health, and a responsive after Nick Fury. After Daredevil defends against an attack, move 1 damage from him to the attacking enemy. I have almost exclusively used this Daredevil to defend, give him an extra boost of hit points and defend, because being able to basically block an attack and then send some damage back at the attacker is, I mean, it's a form of retaliate, but it's a retaliate that kind of is self-healing, and it's a unique ally. Like I said before, this one could easily be swapped out, and I think that it might be the weakest of the allies for the theme, but still I think that it has a purpose, and I think that it's an interesting card, and one that, like I said, you give it some extra health and suddenly it's doing very unique things. We got North Star. Of course, some of these cards are not going to have images, of course. So a 3-cost ally, 2 attack, 1 thwart, 3 health, X-Men traded ally with interrupt. When a boost card is turned face up during an attack, deal 1 damage to North Star, cancel all boost icons on that card. So this is going to be helpful to not only allow Nightcrawler to know when he's defending using his BAMFs that he's not going to take any extra damage because he's got that high 3 defense, but it's going to add to what we are looking to do with some of the other cards. Chiefly, we'll get to it a little bit later, but Unflappable is the one card that definitely comes to mind here where you don't want to be taking damage. This allows you to know you're going to defend for 3, you're not going to take any boost icons, you're not going to take any extra damage, or at least you shouldn't. Then we've got Polaris, who is a 3-cost ally, 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 health, X-Men traded. After Polaris enters play, give a X-Men character a tough status card. So easy, low-hanging fruit here is just give it to her, but frequently you're going to want to be giving it to Nightcrawler. She's just a good ally because she can help keep your other X-Men traded allies alive, and also just keep Nightcrawler around to do as much blocking as possible. Professor X, pretty classic, 3-cost ally, 3 thwart, 1 attack, 3 health, psionic X-Men traded ally with force response. After Professor X enters play, choose 1. Confuse the villain, or stun a minion, or ready an X-Men character. At the end of the round, if Professor X is still in play, discard him. So after you've done your encounter card from the villain phase, Professor X will go. Frequently, much like Nick Fury, you're just going to use him as a defender. I will say that I have frequently started to go down the wrong path where I put out Professor X, I have him like thwart for 3, and then I go, okay, the main theme is still pretty high, I should probably go to Alter Ego. Or no, I guess it would be the other way around. Now that I have lowered the main scheme, I'm safe to go to Alter Ego. But like part of the reason why I'm going to Alter Ego is I'm worried about my health, probably, or I'm just making frequent trips to Alter Ego. But Professor X then doesn't block, and I just lose him. And it is what it is. There's no wrong way to play Professor X. It is really powerful because it is up to what is important in the moment. It's just sometimes you have this nice plan just right out in front of you, and you just go, I'm just going to do something different. Then we've got Triage, who is the only card out of Age of Apocalypse. Still like him, though. He is a 2-cost ally, 1 thwart, 1 attack, 2 health, X-Men traded, and a response of after Triage enters play, heal 2 damage from an X-Men character. Now, I would probably not play First Aid in a lot of decks, but First Aid on a body that can block a lot of damage, and hopefully there's no overkill, is super helpful. It's also super helpful to allow Nightcrawler to gain some health back because he is probably going to want to be defending an awful lot, and not every turn goes the way that you plan, and that's cool. Then we're moving on to Come At Me Bub, a card out of the Nightcrawler pack. That's the one that has Wolverine on it, which I'm guessing I've edited in the picture, but he's a 0-cost event tactic. Hero action, discard cards from the encounter deck until you discard a minion. Put that minion into play, engage with you, heal 3 damage from your identity, and give your identity a tough status card. This is an incredible card. If you can get the Nightcrawler pack, this is one of those cards that just makes having Nightcrawler all the better. I have used this a lot in Thor and Valkyrie decks because those are minion matter decks. And yeah, if you are just in a hero that enjoys fighting minions, this could be the card for you. For Nightcrawler, it's great because it heals him back up. It gives him a tough status counter, so you're kind of blanking whatever the minion might be doing. You're certainly blanking what the villain's doing if you're really that concerned about it. But yeah, no, I love this card. I'm so happy that it exists, and it definitely helps with, like I said, again, Unflappable, which we will get to. Powerful Punch. The first card I think about when I think about Nightcrawler is Powerful Punch. It's the kind of card that I want to see, and it absolutely plays into what he's trying to do, and was, I think, a card that I was using before, but now is definitely highlighted by the existence of the Change of Fortune archetype. So it is a 2-cost event, attack defense traded, and it has a hero interrupt of attack/defense. When an enemy initiates an attack, deal 4 damage to that enemy. So this is a nice way to just shut down an attack of a 4 or less hit point minion, or I guess even the villain. If you are getting that close, you can just set it up to be like, oh, you thought you were going to win, and no, you are now defeated. I've won the scenario. Cheers amongst all of the countryside. Just a cool card, and it works in the place where Nightcrawler wants it to work. You're going in to defend. Maybe you don't have the bandwidth to defend everywhere. You can just throw 4 damage at the enemy that was attacking you so that you are free to jump amongst the board. Repose, which again is out of the Nightcrawler pack. It is a 1-cost event defense traded with hero interrupt. When your hero defends against an attack, it gets +2 defense for that attack. So you're going to at least be up to you're going to be at least at 5, which is pretty incredible. If you take no damage from that attack, deal 3 damage to the attacking enemy. So this is very similar to, was it Tally-Ho? Tally-Ho, yeah. So it's very similar to Tally-Ho in a way where you are getting in a pretty substantial amount of damage. 3 is good enough to take out some smaller minions. It's good enough to just sort of like, obviously you don't want to break it tough on this, but it can break it tough if you're really that against a wall and between rock and a hard place, and this is going to be your way to get rid of the tough. All power to you. Basic energies, the power of protection, which I'm all cool on because 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, actually, you know what? Maybe this is actually a little low on the need for this. So maybe you don't need this. For some reason in my mind, I looked at this and said we can easily get to 7, but maybe I'm thinking like armored vest costs more than I thought it did. Either way, not a big deal. Then we get to Moira McTaggart, who is a great mutant traded support here. Great support for mutant traded heroes. She's a 2-cost support, persona traded, to play only if you have the mutant trait, with the response of after a mutant alter ego changes into hero form, exhaust Moira McTaggart, that hero's controller draws 1 card. I get a lot of use out of this in Deadpool because he goes to alter ego so often, but similar to how I wanted the in aspect like Moxie and Perseverance, like I wanted that suite of cards to work, and it just never did. That was usually came down to like a timing issue. Moira McTaggart sits in play. She's going to be giving, especially if you're playing with an X-Men multiplayer team, but if you're just playing just Nightcrawler, she will get you an extra card. That means you're probably looking at 7 cards in your hand, which just gives you a lot of space to do what you need to. And yeah, she's just a great support to have. Got X-Jet, 3-cost support vehicle X-Men traded with the response of exhaust the X-Jet, generate a wild resource for a player whose identity has the X-Men trait. So Nightcrawler already has a pretty inexpensive kit, but this just being able to be a resource for you that just is consistently keeping your cards in your hand and not being used as resources is great. Pretty much a staple. The only thing that we're kind of missing from this deck, and maybe it's because it just wouldn't fit, but I guess since we're already breaching the topic of maybe swapping out these two just to bring the pack size down, Utopia is a good card to have, and that's kind of a missing support here. Because that allows when a X-Men traded character comes into play, you can ready an X-Men character. And we got Armored Vest. 1 cost upgrade, play under any player's control, max 1 per player. Your hero gets +1 defense. So this is just a nice way to kind of go beyond what Repose was doing and make sure that you always have 4 defense. Makes it so that you can basically defend every turn and not take any damage, and just use the rest of your cards to be the ones doling out damage. The BAMFs, Change of Fortune. A favorite card of 2024 for me. 1 cost upgrade, play under any player's control, max 1 per player. Response: after you defeat an enemy during the villain phase, exhaust this card, draw 2 cards. This definitely plays into how you are going to be able to consistently just play on the villain phase, is because your hand is going to be stacked up with cards. You're going to be able to use your allies to do all the attacking, and hopefully you can use your powerful punches to draw into more powerful punches. And yeah, this was just such a change in what protection was doing that it just became a big highlight. Like I said, 2024, this was like a highlight for me, and I think it is a great card to have. Electrostatic Armor, another great protection card. 1 cost upgrade, armor tech, play under any player's control, max 1 per player. Say it with me. Response: after you defend against an attack, deal 1 damage to the attacking character. So this is further and further and further. Well, 1, this is a way to defeat minions during the villain phase, but then also just a way to tank all those defenses you're making, because basically anytime a card says defend, so like powerful punch is an attack, but it's also a defense. So you are both making an attack, you are also making a defense. So that will trigger Electrostatic Armor. It will deal a damage. You don't need to not take damage to get that, and it's just great. And then last card we're talking about is Unflappable, which I would say is another cornerstone of this kind of deck, where it is a 1 cost upgrade condition, play under any player's control, max 1 per player. Response: after you defend against an attack and take no damage, exhaust Unflappable, draw a card. So this is really going to help you, just like Change of Fortune. This is going to help you to be very flush with cards and be able to make meaningful moves during the course of the game. The only thing that I would say that I would change, obviously there's the 2 cards I've already highlighted, but I would actually consider that maybe Powerful Protection could be a different card. There's not that many like actual defense traded cards now that I look at it. So there is the defensive energy, the defensive response. I suppose both of these are defenses. That's 6 cards. I don't know that that's enough that I would be. And then you got 2 there. Okay, so yeah, actually the only thing that I might change, if you have it, is there is the resource that basically when you play a defense event, I think you heal a damage. But either way, cool deck. And yeah, I wish I could read the entire breakdown, but unfortunately I don't speak Korean and I don't trust Google Translate to express all the nuances. But let's go talk about the Nemesis kit and the obligation and wrap this all up. And we are back to talk about the obligation, which is a Crisis of Faith. Give to the Kurt Wagner player. You may flip to alter ego form, choose to either exhaust Kurt Wagner, remove Crisis of Faith from the game, or discard each attack and defense event in your hand. Discard this obligation. He obviously has 2 cards that are thwart events. Yeah, in terms of just his kit, 2 defense events, 2 attack, 3 attack. Is that what it is? Okay, so naturally his actual kit has a fair amount of cards. These are all the cards that fit into that category. I'm never too worried about this. I will say that Nightcrawler is a hero that I used a lot when he first came out, and I've probably played all of 3 or 4 games since he's come out, just because I kind of learned that he wasn't my playstyle. So I'll even say that this obligation hasn't made a huge impact on me. I think every time I've had it, I think once I discarded all the events because I had like one attack event in my hand, and that qualified enough for making a meaningful change to the game. And it might have also been because Nightcrawler was already exhausted, and I didn't have the capacity to move from the game. But yeah, this is a very classic kind of design for an obligation, and it's never made enough of an impression to be anything too worrisome for me. Then we have Azazel and the side scheme of Brimstone Dimension. So Azazel is a minion with 2 scheme, 3 attack, 3 health, the elite and Niaphim trait. He has Quick Strike, which is very relevant with 3 attack. That is relevant enough that in standard 3 games where you are at like 2 counters away from going into the Shadow of the Past mode, you basically do not want to go into the villain phase without at least 4 health, because it's entirely possible, especially in multiplayer, that you will get those 2 counters, and it just so happens that you'll be the one that draws Azazel, and that sucks. But if you're just playing regular game, regular standard, then you live dangerously, because Shadow of the Past can come at any moment. This is one of those cards where Shadow of the Past happens and you're a little worried, because 3 damage. I suppose if you go in Alter Ego, you just negate this altogether, but that Quick Strike matters with 3 attack. Azazel cannot have upgrades attached, so you can't put the BAMF onto it. And then he has a boost ability. Deal Azazel to the Kurt Wagner player as a face down encounter card. So if he happens to be a boost card, he's going to get put in. He's going to be one of Nightcrawler's encounter cards, which means that you know you're getting the Quick Strike at that point. So yeah, I would say I have been very careful. I think the 2 or 3 times that Azazel's come into play, that I am defeating him not immediately before we do a shuffle. If I can outlast him into the point when you've shuffled the encounter deck and he's going into the discard pile and he's just going to be there for the rest of the game, kudos. If you have a couple more turns before you're going to shuffle the encounter deck, if you can reasonably say, I don't think we're going to burn through the rest of the encounter deck, putting him into the discard pile is okay, but like, you do not want to put him in where like you're going to shuffle the encounter deck and suddenly he could be in he could be anywhere in that 30 card encounter deck. He can be very scary. Let me just put it that way. And then the side scheme is Brimstone Dimension, a side scheme with 5 threat on it and the hazard icon. When defeated, the player who defeated this scheme finds Azazel and deals it to themselves as a face down encounter card. Take back everything I just said. Azazel is going to keep attacking you no matter what you do. He might not be dealt to the Kurt Wagner player, but he's just porting in. It's thematic. It is very thematic. He is just porting in to do damage to you in whatever way possible. For the most part, I think I've defeated the Brimstone Dimension immediately every time, so that all you really need to do is just like, Azazel's already in play. Maybe he's moving over to a different player. Quick Strike then might come into play. Maybe you've got someone who has Disguise and they're able to just get rid of Brimstone Dimension while they're in Alter Ego. Either way, all these different combinations and more. He is not somebody to just trifle with. He will come and get you. Then we've got Azazel's Sword, a weapon upgrade or a weapon attachment. Gives +1 attack attached to Azazel, otherwise attached to the villain. That is important. Attached enemies' attacks gain piercing. That is very important. Hero response: after attached enemy attacks you, discard 1 random card from your hand. Discard this card. So I have chosen to do that just about every time. I think one time it ended up on... Who did it end up on? It was a villain. Was it when I was playing against the Sentinels? Master Mold. I think Master Mold had this on him once, and you just don't want to deal with that, so you will discard a card at random just so that he does not have that piercing attack. But overall, nothing too imposing, just a card that you want to get rid of as soon as possible, probably most of the time. And last but not least, let's talk about Brimstone Strike. A treachery with, when revealed, in Alter Ego, find Azazel and reveal him. He schemes, and when revealed in hero form, find Azazel and reveal him, which means he's going to quick strike you. He's going to get that attack in. This is thematic. It's nice. Furthers Azazel's general scheme of he's just going to show up constantly. He's going to pour it in from the discard pile, from the deck, from somehow you set him aside, you put victory on him or something. I don't know. But he's going to come back and he's just going to be really annoying. I suppose the fact that he schemes for 2 is relevant. So if you do happen to bring him in Alter Ego, he might get multiple schemes in and just really be annoying. And yeah, that's its own problem. But overall, this just, like I said, it complements what he's doing. It just makes him that much more annoying. And yeah, Azazel overall is just a very interesting Nemesis, because I think he just portrays that whole teleporting in thing as a minion very well. But that is it. Like I said, I like Nightcrawler in concept. I really liked him when I was reading over all the preview stuff, but he has become a hero that's sort of just kind of fallen off for me. I think just his play style just didn't fit what I wanted to do. I'm just not somebody that always loves to play during the villain phase. He does a lot of that, and when I want to do that, I want to play as Spider-Gwen, or Ghost Spider. I would say that he plays an awful lot like Ghost Spider, but I just like Ghost Spider enough that he just kind of plays second fiddle. But also that means that other people get to play Nightcrawler around me and have a good time. And he is a great support hero. If you're somebody that just wants to be able to keep everybody else alive and do some kind of combo-y stuff, he might be the hero for you. Overall, I like him. I honestly don't know if he's in like my top half of heroes. At that point, we're bordering on like the top 30. We're getting very close to that. And I don't know if he cracks into my top 30. But also, I don't have hugely negative feelings about him. He's just kind of middle of the road, and just, like I said, he's just not the hero for me. But I also think that it's not power level, it's not fun, it's just play style is just not what I'm always looking for. But either way, you pick him up if you want to. We will be back next week with Magneto, but until then, thank you for your time and have a great day.